Hi students, welcome back to my channel Economic Lectures. We were discussing about microeconomics, the basic concepts that comes under microeconomics. And we said in the first video itself that this series will go for around 7 videos. And this is the 7th video that comes under microeconomic analysis, or basically demand analysis. When it comes to demand, of course, many of the firms, many of the economic units, they also consider demand forecasting as a major part of their business or major part of their economic policy. Be it a small firm, be it a large firm, demand forecasting has its own importance. Because without forecasting, without knowing the way the demand goes in the future, an economic unit cannot set its goal. An economic unit cannot adjust its production, adjust its raw materials, and so. So in this video, we'll be learning about demand forecasting. So what is demand forecasting and what are the ways through which we can forecast the demand? So what is demand forecasting? Accurate demand forecasting is essential for a firm to enable it to produce the required quantities at the right time and to arrange well in advance for the various factors of production. Of course, we know that demand forecasting means forecasting the demand of a particular good or a particular service in the coming future. So, for what purpose we are forecasting the demand? Because accurate demand forecasting is essential or is compulsory for a firm to manage its production on the right time. For example, if we are not forecasting the demand and by a sudden in the next month or in the next few months the demand goes up and you don't have the production to combat the demand, that will be a drastic situation for an economic unit. So in order to overcome such situations, we have to forecast the demand using certain parameters and thus manage our production. So we can arrange the factors of production on time. We can arrange the fund or the money on time and so. So demand forecasting is an objective assessment of the future course of demand. That's how we can mention. That's how we can specify it as in a subjective manner. Objective assessment of the future course of demand. Okay, fine. So there are many types of demand. So let's go look forward. What are the types of demand forecasting? Based on the time span and planning requirements of business firms. When considering the time span, for example, the time taken for demand forecasting. Oh, we'll be forecasting for 1 year, we'll be forecasting for 5 years, we'll be forecasting for 15 to 20 years. So based on that, the types of demand forecasting is different. And also the planning requirements, what are requirements we. So let's go through the types of demand forecasting. The first one is short-term demand forecasting. Short-term demand forecasting in the sense that we'll be forecasting only for 1 year. Short-term demand forecasting is limited to short periods, usually for 1 year. That's how short-term demand forecasting comes. So what's the important purpose of short-term demand forecasting? I'll just read out the points, hope it will be clear for you. Helping the firm to reduce the cost of purchasing raw materials. When we are forecasting the demand for a 1 year, that means for a short term, and of course the market fluctuates and the price of raw materials increases and decreases, so we can plan when and how we should buy the raw materials. So that's how demand forecasting helps a firm to reduce the cost of purchasing raw materials. The second point is deciding suitable price policy so as to avoid an increase when the demand is low. So we can have a price policy and adjust the price according to the demand that we have forecast. The third one is forecasting short-term financial requirements. Short-term financial requirements for plant production. So in the future, in the coming 1 year, if we have to increase the production, we will have to should have a plan on the financial requirements. We should have the plan for the funds in order to increase the production. So by forecasting, we can arrange it beforehand. And the fourth purpose is evolving a suitable advertising and promotion program. So, by demand forecasting, we can also arrange the required advertising and the promotion program for the product or service that we give. This is the reason, the main purpose for short-term demand forecasting. The second one is the second type of demand forecasting is long-term demand forecasting. So what is that? This forecasting is meant for long period, be it 10 years, be it 15 years, be it 20 years. It comes below long-term demand forecasting. And the important purpose of long-term forecasting is there are 4 points I'll be reading out. Planning of a new unit or expansion of existing unit. If you're planning to develop your manufacturing unit, or buy new machines, or hire new employees, that all comes among long-term demand forecasting. So in the next 15 years, if you're planning a 50% growth in your production, so you will be having to plan in that way. You will be having to buy new machines, and on beforehand you will have to appoint new employees and appoint new training staff, and in that way you'll be having to expand your unit. The second one is planning long-term financial requirements. Of course, you will have to go for the credit. So in order to get a long-term credit, you will have to prepare a report, a detailed project report, and submit to the economic unit, submit to the financial unit in order for the credit and that procedures. The third one is planning of manpower requirement. That's what I said in along with the first point. You'll be requiring new employees, new skilled employees, and of course you might be you will have to provide training for the current employees. That's how planning of manpower requirements. The fourth point, the fourth purpose of long-term demand forecasting is to forecast future problems of material supply and energy crisis. When your production is when you plan to increase your production by more than 50% or nearly 100%, so you should have a clear-cut plan on the supply of raw materials. You should have a clear-cut planning of your energy requirements, because energy is a much needed and of course the most faced crisis in the modern world. So for all these things you will have to, for these purposes, we are planning or forecasting the demand on a long term. So these are the two types of demand forecasting. So next we are discussing what are the methods that we use for demand forecasting. Through what all methods we can forecast demand. The first one is, as you can see from the slide, it's the survey method. So what is a survey method? Under this method, information about the desire of the consumers and opinions of experts are collected by interviewing them. Simple, just interviewing, be it the consumers, be it the experts, be it the salespersons, and by interviewing them, you'll be getting the information on how to forecast your demand, how much the demand will increase or how much the demand will decrease. So that's a survey method. So survey method, again, we can divide the survey method in two various types. The first one is opinion survey method. So what is opinion survey method? Under this method, the company asks its salesmen to submit estimate of future sales in their respective territories. This method is more useful and appropriate because the salesmen are more knowledgeable about their territory. Each and every firm will have a salesman or a salesperson in a particular territory, geographical region. So he will be knowing the changes or the growth or the decline of any certain point when it comes to their business. So when it comes to opinion survey method, it's the company just contacting their salesmen, asking them about the possibility of a change in demand in their locality. So that's what opinion survey method. The next one is expert opinion. Expert opinion means the company contacts experts in that particular field and will ask them to submit a report on these and these things. Apart from salesmen and consumers, Distributors or outside experts may also be used for forecasting. That's what in a manufacturing unit, there might be experts in the market who can demand their forecast, or who can forecast the change in the business in the coming years. So the company will be contacting such experts and will take their opinion. So that is the second type of survey method. The third type is Delphi method. So what is that? Under this method, a panel is selected to give suggestion to solve the problems in hand. Panel members are kept apart from each other and express their views in an anonymous manner. So the company will appoint a panel, and each panel member will work independently, and they will express their views in front of the management of the company. So that's the Delphi method. Delphi method is much similar to the expert opinion method, and in Delphi method there will be a fixed panel, for example 5 to 6 members or 10 to 12 members, and of course the company gives them the duties. The company will ask to study these and these factors, and so on. So they will be studying it independently, without being indulged among other members, and they'll submit their report. So that's the Delphi method. The fourth one when it comes to survey method is consumer interview method. Simply, the company will be contacting the consumer and will be asking the questions of his buying plans, of his future plans, and in that way, yeah, you can get the data for forecasting your demand. So the consumer interview method can be of three ways. It can be of complete enumeration. What is complete enumeration? The first point, complete enumeration. Complete enumeration in the sense that you're contacting each and every consumer that comes to your shop, that buys your product. The second one is sample survey. That means you will be selecting a sample of 1,500, and you will be interviewing only that sample, and you will get the data that you need. The third one is end use method. What is end use method? The demand for product from different sectors such as industries, consumers, export and import are found out. So end use method in the sense that the demand for the product or the service that you provide, of course, you will have that your product or your service will be used by people from different sectors. It will be from industries. It will be used as final goods for final consumption. Sometimes your good will be exported, sometimes it will be imported, and so on. So your good will be used in different sectors. So you will be interviewing, you will be taking the interview of the consumers from all these sectors, and that's what we call end use method. So we were discussing about the methods of demand forecasting, and the first method was survey method, and in survey method we discussed about the opinion survey method, the second one expert opinion, the third one Delphi method, and the fourth one consumer interview method. The second major method of demand forecasting is statistical method. So from the name itself, it's clear that you'll be using certain equations, you'll be using certain software, certain statistical rules, statistical methods in order to find the demand in the future. It is used for long-term forecasting. It should be clear that statistical method is every time used for long-term forecasting. In this method, statistical and mathematical techniques are used. So there are various techniques where various rules when it comes to statistics and mathematics, and these techniques are used to forecast demand. This method relies on past data. So when it comes to statistical method, of course, statistical method doesn't doesn't rely on what observations, or doesn't rely on suggestions, but they use the past data. The written and recorded data is used by them in order to forecast the demand. So this includes the various methods that comes under statistical method. The first one is trend projection method. So what is that? Under this method, demand is estimated on the basis of analysis of past data. So you are projecting the trend. What was the trend of demand for a particular commodity in the past 5 years? So by looking towards that trend, you can forecast the trend that would come in the next 5 to 10 years. Here, demand is estimated on the basis of analysis of the past data. As we said, this method makes use of time series. So here we are using the time series data. In each year or in each month, what was the usage of certain good or service and how it has grown. The second one is regression and correlation. It's a major part when it comes to mathematical economics, and you might have studied about that. And regression and correlation. So you will be having a dependent variable, you will be having an independent variable. When it comes to demand forecasting, the dependent variable is of course the sales, and the independent variables are price of the related goods, income of the consumer, the advertisement, etc. So there might be many independent variables, and the only dependent variable will be of course the sales. Thus by using the regression and correlation analysis, we can get to the demand forecasting. The third one is extrapolation. So what is extrapolation? What is the meaning of extrapolation? Its meaning is to guess or think about what might happen using information that is already known. So extrapolation is a guessing method. You'll be guessing, or you will be suggesting such and such things based on the information that is available to you. In this method, the future demand can be extrapolated by applying binomial expansion. So you'll be using mathematical and statistical methods. You'll be having the data in front of you, and you will be forecasting, or you will be guessing based on that. That's what we call extrapolation. The fourth one that comes under statistical method is simultaneous equation method. So what is simultaneous equation method? This means the development of a complete model which will explain the behavior of all variables which the company can control. So you'll be forming an equation and you will be implementing all the variables, so the behavior of the variables in that model, and thus using that you will be bringing out the demand for the future. That's what simultaneous equation method. The fifth one is barometric technique. So what is barometric techniques? Under this, present events are used to predict directions of change in the future. So by taking into consideration the present events, you will be predicting the directions of the change in future. For example, for a particular commodity, the demand is decreasing for the last 5 years. Of course, we can decide that the demand will be decreasing for the next 5 years too. So this is just a small example. So you will be using other indicators and all, and thus you'll be predicting the direction of change in the future. And for this we'll be using, what are the tools that we use for this? We'll be using the statistical and economic indicators such as personal income, employment, GNP. So what is GNP? Gross national product, industrial production, etc. So by using these factors, using these indicators, you will be able to predict the change, and this is called barometric techniques. So these are the 5 methods that comes under statistical method. Okay, fine. So what we were discussing, about the methods of demand forecasting. The major two methods are survey method, and it's of course used for short-term demand forecasting, and the second method is statistical method, and this is of course used for long-term demand forecasting. So the last point that we are discussing, what are the factors that affect demand forecasting? There are many factors that affect demand forecasting. We'll just point out some. The first one is prevailing business condition. What is the present business condition? What is the present price level? What is the present per capita income? What is the consumption pattern? What is the saving, investment, employment? All these data. So forecasting demand will be depending on these conditions. Without that we can't. This will of course affect demand forecasting. That's what we said. The second point is condition within the industry. So what are the industrial policies taken by a government or the international organizations? So demand forecasting will also depend on that. The third one is condition within the firm. What is the plant capacity? What's the quality? For example, your plant is capable of only producing 100 units a day, and in the next 10 years you are planning your company to increase the production to 200 units per day. But without increasing the plant size you can't do that, isn't it? So that's what we said. The plant size, the condition of the firm will of course affect demand forecasting. The next point is factors affecting export trade. Of course, when the economy is more liberal towards exports and imports, that will help you in demand forecasting. But if the country restricts exporting and restricts importing, then it's a factor that affects your demand forecasting. The market behavior. So how does the market behave? The next point is sociological condition. So what is the sociological condition? Well, for example, the growth in the population. If the population increases, or if the growth in population remains stable, what's the age group? Is the population is aging? That means the elder generation, the above 50, the above 60 population is increasing, or the teenage population, the youths are increasing, or everything depends on everything impacts demand forecasting. That's what we call sociological conditions. Population details, age group, family life cycle, education, family income, and many other factors. The next one is psychological condition. The taste, the habit, the attitude, perception, culture. uh, when we just consider our country, our particular place that we born, of course we all will have a certain culture. But when we are considering the when we forecast a demand for the next 10 years, of course most of us are disregarding our culture, and we are going towards the European culture. So if a company is planning to make a production in a traditional good, in a traditional service related to your culture, of course they will have to think about that, because we are most among our country, among our particular place, we are going towards the Western culture or the English European culture. So this is just an example that I said. The last factor that affects demand forecasting is competitive condition. How much competition is there in the market? So are you a monopoly, or there are other firms for the competition? So these are some factors that affect the demand forecasting. When we are going deep into the discussion, there are many other factors that affect demand forecasting. So that's what we have discussed till yet. So demand forecasting is not a simple topic. Here we have given only an introduction to demand forecasting. So this is the last video when it comes to demand analysis, and of course we'll be also having the supply side of this, or the supply analysis. So demand and supply are the basic concepts when it comes to the discussion of microeconomics, and microeconomics is much important when it comes to the whole discussion of the topic of, or the subject matter of economics. Hope everything is clear. You can clear your doubts through the comment box. Thanks for watching my video. I would request you to like, share, and subscribe my channel. And of course, you can comment your views. You can comment the topics that you require for the further discussion and all. Thank you. See you in the next video.